Yesterday, I officially finished my 19th Stephen King book, so I decided it was finally time to do a ranking of all the Stephen King books I read and see how they place up. Starting off at number 19, I'm going to go with The Long Walk by Richard Bachman, aka Stephen King. This to me just felt like a very early work by him. I think it's filled with a lot of rage. It's filled with a lot of deep, depressing emotions. And while I appreciate that, what work didn't work for me here was the character work. I just thought it was weak compared to his best stuff. It just wasn't there for me. I had already experienced a lot of his really great novels, and this just wasn't one of them. I can appreciate the work. I think if I had read it early, I would like it more, but unfortunately, it just did not work for me. Therefore, it's my least favorite Stephen King novel so far. Number 18, this is probably low for most people, but Salem's Lot. It was my first Stephen King novel. I didn't know what to expect going into this, but I think my expectations were simply too high. A lot of people told me that this was a very scary novel, that it was filled with a lot of horror, that it was the best vampire story, and I just can't agree with any of that. I do think it's a very fun novel. I think it's a small town horror. I think it embodied a lot of what I've experienced in a small town that's dying or is really small. All that, I really like that part. But the vampire stuff, I also liked, but it just wasn't quite there, and it wasn't scary. So I think my expectations were simply in the wrong place. At number 17, I'm going to go with End of Watch, the third book in the Bill Hodges trilogy. This just is much weaker than the other two. I thought the story here wasn't up to par compared to the other two. I didn't really like the psychic angle that this went for. I did like the reintroduction of the villain here, but otherwise, I wasn't blown away. The characters are still good here. It's still a great thriller by Stephen King, but just not his best work. Number 16, I'm going to go with Mr. Mercedes, the first book in the Bill Hodges trilogy. Again, just one of those books where it's like, this just didn't quite work for me completely. It was a great introduction to our characters. I really liked how much of a thriller this felt like. I thought the villain was great. It's just not as good as his other stuff, and that's okay. So number 15, gonna go with Doctor Sleep, the sequel to The Shining. For me, I think the issue here is I saw the movie first, and I really love the movie. I really love the movie, and the book is kind of different than the movie, so I had certain expectations, and it just didn't quite get there for me. I still love Danny's character. I love his time with Abra. I think it's a great way of examining alcoholism and overcoming addiction and facing our past. I really like all that stuff, but it didn't quite work for me, and I'll have an entire review on it up later. At number 14, I'm going to go with The Shining. This is just, I know that this is low compared to a lot of people, but again, came in with certain expectations that this was going to be really scary, even though I had seen the movie like a dozen times. And it wasn't really scary. It was different from the movie, so the movie had informed my opinion of what this book was going to be like, even though I knew it was going to be different. And I really did enjoy it. I think it's a great book. I think what really held it back for me was the fact that I do all my books on audio, and the narrator just wasn't great. And I know that's not a fair reason to hold it back, but unfortunately, it does. And I didn't love it the way I wanted it to. At number 13, I'm going to go with The Gunslinger, the first book in the Dark Tower series. This was great. Very atmospheric, very different, very odd. I had a friend recently read this and they hated it, but I loved it. They don't understand why I loved it, but I can fall in love with just atmosphere if you're a strong enough storyteller, and Stephen King is absolutely a strong enough storyteller, in my opinion, to make me fall in just in love with the atmosphere here. So I really like this one. It's very odd, very different, and I think it has the greatest first line in fantasy. So just adored it. Number 12, then go with Wolves of the Calla, the fifth book in the Dark Tower series. This one is just a little too long when it comes to, or it's a little too slow in the pacing department for me, especially coming off Wizard and Glass, which feels like just a heart-pounding novel to read. This one just didn't quite work for me. I really do like the Brendan Sturges stuff. I like the Wolves. I like all of that. I like the Seven Samurai inspiration here. But it feels longer than everything that came before it. I think it does suffer from like a slight pacing issue, but otherwise, it's a really solid entry to the Dark Tower. There's no bad Dark Tower books. Let me make that infinitely clear. There are no bad Dark Tower books. At number 11, I'm going to go with Finders Keepers, the second book in the Bill Hodges trilogy. Again, this is one of those ones I really loved. I really thought the villain here was better than the first one. I thought the pacing here was better. I thought the characterization was stronger. Honestly, just one of those books I really loved. I love that it revolved around a story, finding this this I don't know, pamphlet or draft that this author was going to possibly write more in his story, and it was about this great American novel and all that kind of stuff. And I loved it. At number 10, coming in my top 10 Stephen King books so far, is Christine. This is severely underrated in my opinion. Great story about two high school friends. Great story that has a great metaphor for addiction and unrequited love and obsession and what that can do to you. I really, only Stephen King could take a story about a killer car and make me cry by the end. It touched me in a very personal way because I'm from a small town in Pennsylvania, and I had friends, not friends like Arnie, but I had male close friendships growing up, and I know what it's like to lose a friend, whether that means like literally lose them or you're just separated by distance, time, difference of opinion, whatever it may be. I totally touched me in a very real way, and it's one I still think about today. So yeah, very much deserving of that number 10 spot. Number 9, The Drawing of the Three, the second book in the Dark Tower series. This one's just insane. Just deeply insane. From Roland getting his finger bit off, to a cocaine heist, to meeting a schizophrenic black woman. This book has it all. It's awesome. It is awesome. I highly recommend, if you're going to try the Dark Tower series, please give it till book 2, because this one is deeply insane and better represents what the Dark Tower series is all about. Number 9, gonna go with The Wastelands, the third book in the Dark Tower series. I could swap the Drawing of the Three and the Wastelands depending on the day. I like this one slightly more because the quartet is forming. It's more focused in Midworld, and I really like Blaine the Train. I think he's a great villain. The idea of a serial killer train is just awesome to me. It's very fun. Number 7, probably low for most people, is It. This is just one of the greats. This is one of the greats. It is absolutely amazing. I think, again, to a degree, this comes down to expectation. Going into this book, I had already read it once, and I remember being scarred by it all those years ago when I did try reading it, and I think I came in expecting to be scarred again, but what I found instead was a beautiful small-town horror, probably the greatest small-town horror novel of all time. One of the best journeys with these children ever. This just tour de force of horror, what it's like to be in a small town, racism, all these other things just combined together. And it was really poignant. And I think when I reread it, which I believe I'm going to do this year, I'm going to love it even more, and it's going to go up. It was just absolutely fantastic. Number 6, controversial take again, Song of Susanna, the 6th book in the Dark Tower series. A lot of people don't like this one because it gets super meta. The author shows up in this one, but I loved it. I love the meta stuff. I love the stuff that happened in this book. It was so weird. It was so funky. It was so different than all the other entries. I loved it. I really did. I thought it was great. I thought it was a great way to set up the final book, and I get why other people don't like this, but it tickled my fancy. I was in it with the Dark Tower. As soon as I read that first line, I knew I was going to fall in love with all of them. And I was right. I was totally right. Number 5, Pet Sematary. Probably the scariest book I've ever read in my entire life. It literally left goosebumps on me. I was afraid to turn off the lights. It was so spooky, so scary. The ending is absolutely perfect. The storytelling here is great. The plot's great. Characters are great. Everything's great. Number 4, The Stand. Another just absolute banger. Just another banger. This is the greatest apocalypse novel I've ever read in my entire life. I think it's one of the greatest novels I've ever read in my entire life. And I'm going to say that about all the ones from here on. It's absolutely fantastic. I think everyone should try and read this once. There's something about it that I feel is like, it's, I think it could be in contention for one of the great American novels, in my opinion. That is how much good it is. That's how good it is. It's one of those ones. You know what I mean? Number 3, Wizarding Glass, the 4th book in the Dark Tower series. Just excellent. Totally embodies this Old West Red Dead Redemption vibe. Great story, great characters, had me crying by the end, totally invested the entire time, love the romance story here. Stephen King is very good at writing romance. He could have been a romance author in another life, and I just loved it. I just loved it. Now for my top 2, starting at number 2, The Dark Tower, the 7th and final book in the Dark Tower series. Perfect ending to this series. I think it's one of the greatest conclusions in all of fantasy. I absolutely loved the journey. I loved everything that happened in here, and like I said, it's just the perfect ending. It's just got everything for me. Gunfights, great characters, death, sadness, had me crying by the end. Perfect ending. And number 1, and what is my favorite novel of all time at the moment, 11/22/63. This is peak fiction. This should be considered in contention to be a great American novel. This should be considered a modern classic, in my opinion. It captures a huge part of the American identity. It is absolutely wonderfully written. Some of the best character work Stephen King has ever written, in my opinion. The plot is amazing. The romance here is dazzling. It made me just appreciate the love I have in my own life for my wife. One of those novels that is transformative to the human soul. If you fall in love with this book, you're going to think about it forever. It is just one of the greatest stories ever told. It made me fall like a child by the end. So yeah, 11/22/63 is the greatest Stephen King novel I've read so far. What are your favorite Stephen King novels? What would your rankings be? Leave it down in the comments. And that's my Stephen King ranking for now.